Hey, this is Tom Strachan at NFLT Strack on Twitter, and this is the Hot Seat with Mags. Let's go.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome back once again to another episode of the Dynasty Hot Seat, the only Dynasty show out there that is a certified inferno. And today we have the legend himself. It's Tom Strachan. Find him over at Twitter at NFL_T Strack, STRACK. Tom, obviously very well known in the Dynasty community for his best ball abilities. He's one of the main writers over at Fantasy Pros, and he does ranking for best ball as well. And he's got his own website, nflbestball.co.uk. But we're not here to talk about best ball today, Tom. We're here to see what you're like at your dynasty chops as well, which I'm sure you'll do an awesome job. And just want to say thank you so much, mate, for coming onto the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Mags. Been trying to get around to this for a little while, but we couldn't make our schedules work. But yeah, definitely excited to be here. Had a good chance to meet you a few weeks back at the UKFFC and been looking forward to it even more since then.
Yeah, exactly. That was such a fun event. So many great people there to bump into, and great seeing people for the first time. So yeah, it's obviously made this a bit easier as well, not meeting people for the first time in the show for the first time ever. You're the first person I've met in person before I've done this show. So that is pretty cool as well. And been looking forward to this one for a while. Whenever I first set up the show, a lot of people I would say, who should I get on the show? And so many people were like, you got to get Tom Strachan on. You got to get T-Strack. So this has been what I've been looking forward to for a while. We're just going to get right now into section number 1 of the show, which is the art of war. And that is just some hints and tips that you got for us, Tom, about people playing Dynasty Fantasy Football. So what do you got for us?
Okay, so the first one, and it's something that you can take into Dynasty, but you could also apply it to redraft. You could include it in best ball. It's knowing your opponents, and obviously that's not always possible. Sometimes you join drafts where the people you're up against, you don't know them. But if you're in a dynasty league, there's a good chance that you're going to know the people vaguely, even if you're just hopping in one that somebody's tweeted out on Twitter or somebody's put on a forum asking for other people. You're normally able to get a gauge on how that person thinks about dynasty, how that person feels about certain teams. So like whenever I'm in a dynasty startup, I'm a big Ravens fan, and everyone knows that I'm going to take my Ravens whenever I can. And it's little bits like that. Knowing that I value Ravens slightly higher means that if somebody comes to me with a trade offer, they can probably push the value a little further. And it becomes one of those things that whether you're looking for trades, whether you're in a startup draft, having an idea about the people around you, how they play dynasty, what type of players they like can be really beneficial. Like I've been in startups with guys who crazily don't like the Konami code quarterbacks. So you know that if one of those guys is starting to head your way, that there's a good chance they're going to come past that person. You also, when it comes to trades, it can be quite easy to kind of get a gauge on what type of player is, if they're all in redraft mindset a lot of the time, then those are the guys who you can flog your kind of older players to. So I'm a big proponent of knowing the kind of people around your team and around your league and what you can get away with and what you can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the best bits of advice. It's the entire reason this first segment is called The Art of War, from that, Shang Shu book, the knowing your enemy and getting a good grip of what to expect and trying to get that high ground on people without them even knowing
it. So my next one is learning how to actually analyze your teams. A lot of people will say, oh, my team's competitive, my team's in a rebuild or a productive struggle or whatever term you want to use. But one tool which I've found really useful, which our friend Rich Cooling at Dynasty Island has put out there, is the ability to put your roster into Excel and look at, okay, this is how I've got the wide receiver X, and how it's valued over there, being able to go, all right, well, really, I've got no wide receivers in the top 10 here. I've got
Mm.
4 of them who are in the 30s, but I need to be able to try, and if I really want to compete, I need to be able to make some deals to move players to be much stronger at that position, even if I'm stronger everywhere else.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, there's loads of useful tools out there for ways you can do it. You can do it in a ton of different ways, but basically looking at things like trade calculators so you can establish a value on your players and totting them up and working out mathematically, okay, this is this and this is that, is a lot more productive than just looking at your roster and going, yeah, I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, I like that as well, and knowing as well. Sometimes the trickiest thing with Dynasty is understanding, a long term asset versus like a short term asset. So you might have a team where you have, I don't know, let's say you have like Traylon Burks and Devonta Smith and T Higgins, like three, really sought after, wide receivers, but not necessarily going to win you a league this year. So it's kind of balancing that. These guys are good, but I'm not ready to win right now. But I need to build the rest of my team around that and wait until those guys are at their win now phase.
Exactly, yeah. So when you can gauge that, okay, actually, I think I can be strong, really strong next year. What kind of
Hmm.
moves can I make this year to set me up even better for next year?
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. So two great tips for us so far, Tom. Have you got a third one for us as well?
Yeah. So my third one is, and again, you can apply this to a lot more formats, DFS, best ball, redraft, anything really.
Yeah.
But learning who to listen to and deciding how to block out the noise, because I mean,
Mm,
we're all on fantasy Twitter far too often, particularly
yeah.
myself. And right now, camp reports are coming out every single day. Like yesterday was crazy for camp reports.
Yeah.
1 minute Chris Godwin was going to be ready for week one. The next thing, Julio Jones is signing with the Bucks,
Yeah.
and it's coming thick and fast. And there's so many people, rightly so, giving their opinions on it. It can be a bit like an avalanche at times in terms of information, and it can feel like quite overwhelming in some ways. So I've found that over the last few years of playing Dynasty, I've really honed in on, maybe 5 to 10 people who are Dynasty analysts who I really value their opinions. When it
Yeah.
comes to beat reporters, there's certain beat reporters that I put a lot more say into what they say than others. Like being a Ravens fan, you see stuff go out to the national press, and it's like, not sure I quite believe that sometimes when the local beat reporters will say nobody at the team's talking. And so,
Hmm.
really, just trying to focus in on the people who you think matter when it comes to making decisions about your team is something that I've really become a big fan of over the last year or so.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and even taking it like a step further, what you can do is take advantage of all that noise and use it against other people, sort of, right? So, for example, like one of your guys, J.K. Dobbins, obviously being placed on the pup list, but I'm still not too worried about that. Really, he obviously had that big injury. It was kind of always going to happen, but some people are freaking out about it. You said go buy J.K. Dobbins, and people are worried about it. Go take that, use that as an opportunity.
That's exactly it. So when Ian Rappaport was tweeting that sort of stuff out and putting it on NFL Network, even he said there'd been no change there. The beat reporters were like, this was the plan all along,
Yeah.
but it's the headline that gets picked up on. And then
Hmm.
Chinese whispers on Twitter, everyone has their say, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, J.K. Dobbins is retiring.
Yeah, it's just like it gets blown out of proportion too much, and although a lot of people in my teams are getting put on the pup list yesterday for some reason, it seemed to be
Yeah.
an avalanche of pup lists, but we'll again
It,
not
it
panic too
feels
much about that.
it feels crazier than usual. Am I right in thinking this pup list extension's a bit different to how it was in previous years?
It must be right because I don't
Yeah,
remember anything like this before.
because every dynasty league I'm in at the minute, the waivers are just exploding. So, like, normally I would be leaving my dynasty leagues kind of like a little bit alone for a week or two and then
Yeah,
really dialing back in. But at the minute, every single day, I'm having to keep a look at who's gone on a pup list and then put waiver claims in straight away. So,
yeah,
it's a good thing the leagues are becoming active a little earlier than they normally do, but
yeah. Hmm.
it's chaos.
Yeah, it is. It is chaotic. I've seen in one league, I've seen Jamison Crowder be dropped and Isaiah McKenzie be picked up, like three just different like rotations around. It's just nobody knows what's going on, right? It's just but yeah, you're right. It keeps everyone active, which is brilliant. So Tom, thank you so much for those hints and tips. And we're gonna move into now, the real meat of the show, which is the hot seat mock draft. So we're gonna pull up our sleeper board here, and it's the same as it happened for everybody else. We got 12 teams, it's 18 rounds, and the first thing, Tom, is in an ideal world, if you were allowed to choose what starting position what you would get, which in some leagues you are, what position would you choose, and why would you pick that position?
So we go in super flex here, yeah, just to clarify.
Yeah. Superflex is not a tight end premium though.
Okay, I'd go around the 5 spot, 5, 6. Normally, I'm quite happy there, but let's go with the 5 and see what falls to us.
Nice. So let's lock in position number 5, and we'll get the draft going. And sometimes it can be quite interesting to see who falls at the 5th or 6th position. I've seen Patrick Mahomes even fall this far before. So let's see who does it. Well, he's not going to fall to us now. He's gone right off the board, and now you're already in a predicament, Tom, because Lamar Jackson is sitting there, right? But it's a real test of the loyalty to the Ravens, and then also is he the guy I want to pick in position number 5? So what do you do here whenever you're kind of torn between players that you want to pick, and then you're obviously your Raven guys, or is this the perfect scenario where it just lines up and Lamar's your guy here anyway?
I think sometimes for me it kind of depends on the draft room and the scoring structure as well. But generally, the reason I said I'm quite happy going with 5 or 6 is it opens up a real large amount of opportunities. Jonathan Taylor can fall at this point. If we could have got Jamar Chase if he hadn't gone at 3, but ideally I want Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson in this spot, and I'm a little bit hesitant with Kyler Murray at the minute because I feel like his value might be kind of peaking again. I'm not a big fan of the Arizona Cardinals management. I feel like they're building a very poor team around him. Anytime that you have to contractually oblige somebody to do film work isn't a good look for a quarterback. So, yeah, I'll go with my boy Lamar and just hope he signs a long-term deal in Baltimore.
Yeah, let's get Lamar locked up. Kind of a sneaky good season as well last year, Lamar Jackson as well, right? They sort of tried to get him throwing the ball a bit more. He did quite well with Hollywood Brown, obviously. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, if you take out the game against the Browns where he got injured after like 10 snaps, he was like 22 points a game. He was amongst the MVP talk.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's just going to continue with him next year as well, and just keep running that ball and keep unlocking those people like Rashad Bateman. I think he's going to have a good season next year for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So we're back on the board now again at position number 8 in round number 2, and you got people like DeAndre Swift up there, Russell Wilson, Breece Hall. Tom, do you ever go into these drafts with a certain idea of this is how I like to draft, or do you just let things kind of fall to you and see what happens?
I tend to let things fall to me a lot. I mean, obviously I'm a big best ball guy, so like I draft a lot of drafts every year. So the more drafts you do, the more comfortable you kind of feel with whatever comes around. You start to know how the boards are going to fall a lot of the time. And even though there's big differences between best ball and dynasty, yeah, I'm quite comfortable seeing how things are going to fall. And in this situation where we're at the 2-8 and I've got Lamar Jackson already, we've got Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, Christian McCaffrey, Javonte Williams, and Austin Eckler off the board. And they're all the kind of win now running backs, apart from Javonte Williams and Najee Harris. But, that kind of back is definitely someone who you could win now with. But I really like here, I'll take Breece Hall, who, for me, I should get a good amount of years out of him. Lamar Jackson, I'm definitely confident in him for the next few years as well. So I don't feel like I'm committing massively to I need to win now this season. I feel like I'm still kind of okay either way with it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And Breece Hall, obviously, just this, phenom coming out of college last year, and just can't wait to see what he's going to do over at the Jets next year. I think that'll be great to watch. And you mentioned baseball there, Tom. Obviously, you're really well known for for like your best ball prowess and like how much you know about it. And what do you think that the main overlap is between like a dynasty draft like this and a best ball draft? What's the main overlap in things that you're looking for? Is it like the stacking that you're a big proponent of, or what is it that you really like to look for?
Yeah, I think in terms of team building, sometimes it is because a huge edge in best ball is how you construct your roster. So I'm always quite mindful of, right, if this was a best ball draft, what would be the things that I wouldn't want to do here? And that could be, in best ball, quite often you see people who are casual taking too many running backs, or if they're
Yeah.
avoiding running backs, taking far too many wide receivers. It's like, how much value am I putting into one position here? Is it going to be too much? Am I going to be left with points on the bench every week? So that's something I'm quite mindful of from a best ball point of view. I think, like you say, stacking is something that in best ball drafts, I'm very rarely leaving a draft without stacking. But in dynasty leagues, it's less so of something I'm concerned about. Like, don't get me wrong, if I can get Lamar and Bateman in a draft, I'm going to be happy because both should be tied to the Ravens for a good few years.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be rushing to get Lamar Jackson and Devin Duvernay because Duvernay could be out of contract in the end of this year, and it doesn't really enhance his game. But you can trick yourself into looking at your roster every week and going, I think Lamar's going to have a big week this week. Devin Duvernay should probably be in the lineup, and then Devin Duvernay runs 2 jet sweeps and catches a 6-yard ball, and you've wasted a spot.
Yeah.
So where are we at now? So we're at the third round pick.
Yeah, and we got people like Deshaun Watson at the top, Devontae Adams, Dalvin Cook, Stephon Diggs, Derrick Henry, and Jalen Waddle sitting up at the top, and Travis Kelce kind of peeking at the bottom there as well.
Yeah, so if it was tight end premium, I'd definitely be considering Kelce, but I feel like, where the value will still be here in the next couple of rounds at tight end. I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle. He's somebody I recently wrote up for Fantasy Pros. I thought, he's definitely going to see a regression in targets this year because Tyreek Hill's in the building, and it's just, the production he had last year was crazy, but I still think he's going to be a very viable fantasy asset for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think Waddle will, it's going to be really interesting to see, what happens with, Waddle and Mike Gesicki as well over there at Miami. Like Tyreek Hill, you have to double team Tyreek Hill or you're going to get eaten alive. So then what happens to Waddle, who, by the end of last year, you had to double team him as well. I don't know what people are going to do against Miami. And then that leaves Mike Gesicki wide open, who, shown that, he's a good pass catcher as well. So I cannot wait to see what Miami do next year.
I think, Mike McDaniels is definitely going to make a really interesting offense there, because if teams start giving that much effort to the pass catchers, the run game should open up, and nobody's too excited about the running game at the minute, but Chase Edmonds definitely looks interesting. Let's see. So we're back on, and
I think you got Justin Fields, Cam Akers, Travis Etienne, Aaron Rodgers still there, looking like he's fresh out of a Nicolas Cage movie right now as well.
Well, I think so. We're in round 4. There's quite a few teams here who haven't taken a single quarterback. So I would like, and generally speaking, I probably would have liked some of the wide receivers that have already gone. But in this scenario, I'll take Justin Fields and just make sure that position, again, I'm staying quite young. I've got Breece Hall, Jalen Waddle, Lamar Jackson, who's, in not too old at all. And then adding Justin Fields to that should be set up well for a good few years.
Yeah, I really like that pick. Justin Fields sliding down people's board a little bit, But I think the main thing for Fields is the coaching staff there at the Bears need to get it right for him last year. I think he was kind of done a little bit dirty last year and didn't really get to show what he's capable of. So hopefully they kind of figure out what kind of talent they've got there for next year.
So next up, where we at? We're kind of like into the 5th round. Let's see.
Deontay Johnson there, Derek Carr, Kenny Walker. I can scroll up and down. I can filter to positions if you want as well.
Give us a little scroll down. Let's see.
Let's have a look. Terry McLaurin, Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson there. There's usually a bit of a tight end tier break after TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of TJ Hawkinson. I was on the Dynasty Wildcard last night, talking him up as a buy. Try to find out why people are down on him, but it's a little earlier than I'd probably go on him. You just scroll back up a second, mate.
Let's have a look. So you had Terry McLaurin, Tua, Darren Waller, Kenny Walker, Derek Carr.
Let's go Deontay
Deontay Johnson.
Johnson. I'm a
Yep.
big fan of Deontay Johnson. He's somebody who I know a lot of people are very high on. Matt Harmon of Reception Perception loves him, and he is a real elite pass catcher. I don't think he's in for a great season this year, particularly, but there's already talk that Pittsburgh probably won't look to extend him next year.
No.
And I find it hard to believe that if a player of his caliber hits the open market, he's not going to land in a really good spot.
Yeah, he's going to get paid next year. Probably not at Pittsburgh. They kind of traditionally, apart from Antonio Brown, I suppose, they don't really do that, right? So
yeah,
he'll end up somewhere, and people will get excited about Deontay Johnson at X team. It doesn't matter what team he goes to; people are going to get excited about where he goes.
Yeah.
All right, Here we are. Back on the clock again, Tom, in round number 6. We got, a couple of running backs at the top with Leonard Fournette, who is running back / offensive line at the moment. We got Josh Jacobs. We got Zach Wilson, Keenan Allen, James Conner, Devonta Smith, and Marquise Hollywood Brown as well, who's another guy that just randomly got put on the pop list.
Yeah, I mean, he's missed a lot of time over the last few years at practice with the Ravens, so it wasn't something that particularly surprised me. We're still early. These guys can come off at a minute's notice, can't they? So see how he does. I'll take Devonta Smith. I'm quite high on the Eagles this year. I think even though Devonta Smith, again, might struggle to see the kind of volume that we'd really like, I think that's an ascending offense. And whether it's Jalen Hurts there next year or not, I'm quite fine with taking the gamble that his situation isn't going to get any worse. I think you look at the offensive line and it's really well stocked. The Eagles, they're not ever like the flashiest team, but they draft maulers, they draft big guys, and they know how to do that. And then they've supplemented them with really good skill position players around them. And Devonta Smith is somebody that I'm very happy whenever I've got him on my team. And here to have him as my wide receiver 3 works perfectly for me.
Yeah, I really like Devonta Smith. I think there was, I might be butchering the stat a little bit, but I think he had like the most separation without reception last year, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So like the most average separation without getting a reception last year. So hopefully, Jalen Hurts can, improve his passing game next year, and that will really take Devonta Smith to the next level.
Okay, so back on the clock, and part of me would like to take Tom Brady, but I don't feel like I've quite got the right build for it at the minute. I think, we've got Lamar Jackson, Breece Hall, Jalen Waddle, Justin Fields, Deontay Johnson, Devonta Smith.
Yep.
It's quite a young core, and perhaps if I'd taken some more win now pieces earlier, I'd take Tom Brady now. But I'm going to take Rashad Bateman and get that stack that, it's not something I was chasing, but now we're into the 7th round, and Rashad Bateman was somebody who everybody was high on last year. And then there seems to be a little bit of hesitancy this year. But at the same time, it's sometimes coming from the same people who say J.K. Dobbins isn't going to be ready this year. The Ravens aren't, the Ravens want to get back to running, blah, blah, blah. But if J.K. Dobbins isn't going to be ready, then Rashad Bateman is going to catch a lot of balls. Marquise Hollywood Brown had 146 targets last year.
Yeah.
Willie Snead had 60-something. Not Willie Snead, sorry, Sammy Watkins. They've not replaced anyone, and even though they expect James Prochet, Devin Duvernay, and Tylan Wallace to make a jump, Rashad Bateman wins the ball in an area of field that Lamar's really good at catching. And as a Ravens fan and as a man who drafts a lot of teams, I'm completely happy getting that pairing.
Yeah, I think, he's saying those things about J.K. Dobbins and Rashad Bateman. Haters, Tom. That's it. Haters.
Yep.
That's it. Right? They're just
they're
jealous. Yes, exactly. So let's get Rashad Bateman locked in. I love that pick there, Rashad Bateman, one of the guys I really got my eye on for next year, and the guy above him, Devonta Smith, as well. So I think two great picks there, and ones I probably would have done the same thing. And I really like there, we're kind of circling back to one of the things we talked about earlier with the hints and tips. It is, understanding what stage your team is at. Is it ready to compete now? So there you're like, I could have taken Tom Brady, but I'm not in that win now mode, so I'll leave him. The value's not worth it. So I really like that.
Yeah, and then this next one kind of falls into exactly that of being like, right, we're building a nice young team, and Kenny Pickett's at the top of the queue, and it just seems really easy to go, right, I'll have Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, and Kenny Pickett. There is the little upside that, if he builds this connection with Deontay Johnson on my team already, then that's great. But now at this point in the draft, if I take Kenny Pickett, I'll view both quarterback and wide receiver as a position of strength.
Yeah, I think Kenny Pickett as well. One of the things I keep coming back to about Kenny Pickett is something Matt Williamson said. He's one of a scout for the Steelers. He said there probably isn't a team in the NFL that knows more about a rookie than the Steelers know about Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
Because obviously he went to Pitt as well. They've been looking at him for so long, and they wouldn't have chosen him if they weren't confident that he was going to be able to run that system. So I think Kenny Pickett's going to have a really good start to his career at the Steelers. Whether or not he'll start from the beginning of next year or not, I think eventually when he slots into the team, he'll do really well.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in choosing players on good franchises as well. And the
Yeah,
Steelers are a great franchise. They're well run. Even this year with the GM change, there's no turmoil. They're in a good position. Their O line could do with a lot of work, but they're getting better. And in the next few years, I would expect them to be challenging again for the AFC North.
Yeah, they always come around, right? The Steelers, they're never bad for that long, and yeah, they'll be back without doubt. And a couple of tight ends fly off the board there. Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth. Is tight end something a lot of people are kind of happy just kind of kick the tight end down the road because it kind of gets a bit murky here, right? As well, like you got people like if we even just look at who's there, like Dawson Knox, Mike Gesicki, Cole Kmet, Zach Ertz. Any one of those guys could be scoring more than the other one. It's kind of hard to tell, I think, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's a position I go back and forth on. Like, I'm not as extreme as some people who it's like it's early or it's late and there's no in between. Personally,
Yeah.
I think I'm more of a value hound when it comes to tight ends. It's like, if they slip past their ADP and you start seeing, okay, well, actually, that person's not being valued. But what are their blocks to them actually being productive this year? And I'm kind of fine a lot of the time just scooping up value through the drafts as I go. But can you just filter to a running back and let's take a look, see who's there? Because I'm conscious I've only got
one
Brees
more
Hall at the minute.
So let's see, you got Tony Pollard there and Kareem Hunt, and who knows if he'll still be a clean. That's trade rumors circling about him, Ryan. Damian Pierce, Rashad White, Isaiah Spiller. Wow, he's going ahead of Devin Singletary and Chase Edmonds. That's a bit mad, right? And then Michael Carter, Ramondre Stevenson, Cordero Patterson there as well. Anyone standing out to you there?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Rashad White because, I mean, the Fat Lenny stuff has probably gone a bit too far. There were pictures of him yesterday reporting for training camp, and he looked all right. Definitely, if I looked in that kind of shape, I'd be fine with it. And I think it's just one of those where it was good fun for us on Twitter, but, pro athletes, they have these big weight fluctuations, and as long as by game day you're all right, it's fine. So again, I'm sticking very much in this theme of kind of being a very young team.
Yeah.
But I believe that Rashad White, when he gets on the field, he's shown that he can be a really good pass catcher. And quite often the refrain this year has been around, well, what if Tom Brady doesn't trust him? And that's the most common question you hear said about Rashad White. When really the question I like to ask is, what if Tom Brady does trust him? And if Tom Brady does trust him, then you're looking at somebody who could really have a huge year and could really pay off his cost.
Yeah, and if history tells us anything, it's that Tom Brady loves throwing to a running back with a second name White. So that's got to be worth something, right? So let's get Rashad White locked in. And yeah, I think you're right. I think he's going to have a really strong season, and especially if anything happens to Leonard Fournette, like. Running back is maybe the one position where you can kind of realistically go, oh, well, if something happens to this person, then this guy will be, up here, because something probably will happen to Leonard Fournette during the season. He has had a history of injuries before, he went to the Bucs, and, he's not getting any younger. I know he's younger than he looks, but yeah, there's a good chance that Fournette will spend some time on the sidelines this season, and White can show us what he's got.
Yeah, yep. Can you just drop over to TE, please? Your tight
Let's have a
ends.
little look. Cole Kmet sitting up there obviously will improve on 0 touchdowns from last year, you'd think, right? Zach Ertz sitting up there as well as Noah Fant, Trey McBride, and Albert O, and my guy Irv Smith Jr. as well sitting there.
Let's go Cole Kmet. I mean, it makes too much sense here. It's, again, he's had a couple of seasons in the NFL, but after saying I don't actively look for these stacks in Dynasty, this is the third one to kind of fall to us.
Yeah.
He's past his ADP. He's somebody who should see decent volume this year. But if things break right for this team, we're building a team that could be a juggernaut, really. So, yeah, I'm kind of quite all right with that one.
Yeah, I think Cole Kmet, great choice. He's someone, again, I'm trying to target as much as I can for next year. I think he's definitely going to outscore what he did last year just based on that, 0 touchdown. That's almost unbelievable for a starting tight end to have 0 touchdowns, right?
Yeah, much like him and Miles Sanders, just the 0 touchdown crew.
Yeah, exactly. So I think both of them will definitely improve on that. And we're on the clock again. Round number 11, pick number 5. Couple of quarterbacks sitting up there, obviously at different ends of their careers. You got Davis Mills and Matt Ryan sitting up there. Zach Ertz still there as well. You could double tap that tight end position as well. And our pal Kev's favorite Adam Thielen still sitting there too.
Can you just have a look at who's on the running backs and maybe just
let's have a look. You got Michael Carter. This is Michael Carter, obviously an interesting one because you have Breece Hall. Does that change your opinion of Michael Carter because you already have Breece Hall?
I think slightly. I think the hate on Michael Carter's got a little too far. And at the UKFFC, I was speaking to our friend Matt from the Wildcard Show and saying I felt like he's given up on him a little too quickly. It's like there are definite paths where Michael Carter could have big roles this season and could have productive roles this season in an offense which should be able to run the ball at times. So it's a little tricky for me. If I had more running backs, I'd be okay to it. But at the minute, with only Breece Hall and Rashad White, it's taking a third running back who, again, is quite young, but is also tied to the same offense as Breece Hall.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure how many usable weeks I'd get out of both of them or where I'd have the guts to put in Breece Hall and Michael Carter.
Yeah.
So let's see. There's nobody really standing out. There's a lot of guys I like in best ball there, but nobody I'd really take in Dynasty right now. So, yeah, let's have a quick glance at the tight end position and see if there's anything that stands out there.
So tight ends, Zach Ertz is there, Noah Fant is there, Trey McBride and Albert O, Irv Smith and Hunter Henry sitting there too.
Let's take Trey McBride. I think there's a very plausible path to Trey McBride being the tight end 1 in Arizona by the end of the season or definitely next season. I think, that's an area which we've seen Kyler Murray rely on targets. And it's entirely possible that DeAndre Hopkins hasn't got a huge amount of time left in Arizona either. So let's grab somebody who should be tied to Kyler Murray for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, playing into what is the shape of this team at the minute. Obviously, Zach Ertz probably going to score more points than Trey McBride this year, but he's not the long-term solution over there as well. That's why they drafted Trey McBride.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's exactly the way to look at it. Okay, so we're probably going to have to go back to running back again here and just otherwise it's going to end up really thin.
Ronald Jones is sitting there. Zamir White also sitting there running back with Tyrion Davis-Price and Brian Robertson, Darrell Henderson, and Khalil Herbert and Kenny Gainwell peeking down the bottom as well.
I'm going to feel like a bit of a fraud for passing on Zamir White here because I just talked him up on the Dynasty Wildcard Show as a buy because I don't believe in Josh Jacobs at all. But for me, I want to inject a little bit more security for this year because I think Zamir White's going to have a role and I think over the course of the season it'll expand and by the playoffs perhaps he'll be somebody you can really count on in fantasy. But right now I've got more faith that Ronald Jones is going to see meaningful amounts of snaps
Yeah.
consistently through the early parts of the year, and that might be able to carry me whilst players like Rashad White and Brees Hall develop into more of a role. So let's go Ronald Jones. I'm not afraid to get hurt again.
Yeah, Ronald Jones, and whenever I'm a Chiefs fan, obviously. Whenever Ronald Jones signed for the Chiefs, I was a bit like, oh, okay. And then I listened to like a couple of podcasts, obviously that are Chiefs centric, and a lot of it was like that offensive line of the Chiefs is actually mainly pass blockers. Like that's what those guys are known for doing. So, or not pass blockers, sorry, run
Run
blockers.
buckers, yeah.
That's what they're known for doing. So there could be these huge gaps open for Ronald Jones, and if Ronald Jones can do anything, it's run really fast. Like he's
Yeah.
quick, and he should hit those gaps and do quite well.
Well, what did we see with Clyde Edwards-Helaire? He doesn't get the high value touches, he doesn't get the passes, and he doesn't get the
No,
goal line touches as much as we'd
no,
like him to. Ronald Jones, for all his faults, is a pretty good between the tackles runner, and he's a pretty good goal line back as well. He fell out of
yeah,
favor in Tampa. Andy Reid is the kind of coach that when you fumble, he doesn't like to give you second chances. Whereas, you look at, Bruce
Bruce
Arians is the
Arians,
type of
yeah,
man. Yeah.
yeah,
Whereas Andy Reid is much more, he G's guys up. He's just wearing his Hawaiian shirts, patting people on the back and stuff. He is the kind of person who'll put you straight back out there. You go back
yeah.
to
I know.
Kareem Hunt's
I've
rookie
watched
year.
Cole Hardman play for the last 3 years. I know that he'll put you back in.
Exactly that. So let's see. So we're back on the clock after a bit of a wide receiver run. Can you just jump
Yeah.
over to wide receiver?
Yeah, let's have a look at wide receiver. Although Samir White is still there. I'm just going to throw that out
That's
there, right?
kind of
Yeah.
what I'm weighing up, like whether I can get the best of both worlds. Oof.
So you got Jalen Tolbert and Wandale Robinson up there. Jacoby Myers, kind of a sneaky one for this year, right? Could well be the wide receiver one over there at New England, kind of sneakily, right? And
Yeah, definitely. And I think he's somebody who I've been picking up in best ball drafts recently, and a little surprised at how far he's falling. His ADP is about 145, and doesn't, what more does he need to show? Yes, he could score a few more touchdowns, but he had a fantastic year. I will take Zamir White, though. We'll go back and keep this theme of this very young team going. And even if things don't quite work right, I feel like I'm going to be in a position to sell off some assets at very high prices and accumulate 23 picks.
yeah, absolutely. So Samir White, someone I've been trying to grab in as many rookie drafts as possible this year. So I'm hoping that Samir White pays off as well. So let's see who comes back round to us in round number 14. It's Khalil Herbert and Wandale Robinson. Jacoby Myers just doesn't quite make it back to us, unfortunately. So I'll flip on all so you can see who's all available there. A bit of a quarterback clog up with Davis Mills up at the top. This is a bit of a sleeper thing, though. They all kind of go round 17. They'll all go. So they'll stay there. I think I can't fix this glitch on sleeper for whatever reason. Is it quarterbacks you're looking for, or do you want to see the other positions?
At quarterback, I feel quite safe in Lamar, Pickett,
Yeah.
and Fields. So yeah, let's go over to wide receiver because I'm a big believer in you can never have too many wide receivers, and creating real depth there is great. Top of the queue, my boy Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
So, whenever I don't know, you're the perfect person to ask, right? Whenever I think about best ball, for whatever reason, MVS just springs to my mind. I feel like he's like the ultimate best ball player, right?
He is, yeah. It's exactly that. And, Hayden Winks over at Underdog Fantasy has a metric called Better in Best Ball that measures how many points you're getting over replacement and stuff like that. And it's really, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the prince of best ball because he can give you absolute floor weeks with 0 points, but he also has the potential to score 25 points in a week and be like the top 5 wide receiver on the week. And his cost is always really small.
Yeah.
I think the way we saw him used in Green Bay was very one-dimensional. He was a deep threat and nothing more. And now the Chiefs have really paid him quite a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
The onus is on them to see whether they can develop him into running more routes. And I'm very interested to see what happens. So yeah, I definitely will grab Marcus Valdez-Scantling here and see how it goes.
Yeah, he's so dynamic, right? And he's obviously got pace to burn, and it's always really fun whenever Andy Reid gets his hands on like a new toy like that, just to see what he can do and what he can think up.
Yeah, and I think the Chiefs are going to play in such a different way to how we used to seeing them play.
Yeah.
You know, the quality of the wide receiver core between Valdez Scantling, Juju, and Sky Moore, it's going to mean defenses have to be more mindful about how they approach them in general. And I'm very excited to see how MVS gets used within that.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. It's going to be an interesting year as well. Maybe planning it more of running the ball. I think just the best thing for the Chiefs this year is just take like a tenth, or like 10% of pressure off Patrick Mahomes, because last year he was just. I mean, people talk about like the Chiefs like they had a bad year last year, like one game away from going to the Super Bowl, right? But just like, you know, get that like 10% of pressure just off Patrick Mahomes and put it out onto other people would be absolutely spot on. So hopefully MVS can do that. And we're back on the board. Round 15. Jarvis Landry. Oh, I'm still on wide receivers. Let's see all the skill positions here. Evan Ingram up at the top. Jarvis Landry. Khalil Shakir, who is another one that Bills camp is, you know, Isaiah McKenzie's doing great. Khalil Shakir is doing great. You know, Jamison Crowder's doing great. You know, they can't all play. So it's going to be interesting to see who's going to win that battle there.
Yeah, there's not really anyone kind of jumping out there, to be honest. Let's have a glance at tight end, because although I've got Cole Kmet and we've got Trey McBride, obviously Trey McBride might not play so much too early.
So yeah, Evan Ingram is there with Robert Tonyan, Brevin Jordan, another good young tight end, and Garrett Everett. Interested to see what he does with the Chargers, and some other guys there too.
Let's take Brevin Jordan. I'm quite confident in him this year. He's somebody who I think, you know, even before the horrible news about John Mechie having leukemia, he was somebody who I was looking to acquire in drafts. But he's somebody who should now see an increased volume, because outside of Nico Collins and Brevin Jordan and Brandon Cooks, the pass catchers are Chris Moore and I think Philip Dorsett. Like these aren't NFL caliber players. They're special teams players. They're just guys. And I'm quite confident that Brevin Jordan's going to see good volume. He had flashed at times last year, but the tight end room was a little larger. Now it's become a bit more concentrated, and you should see the field more, hopefully.
Yeah, nice. I'm actually very impressed you're able to name the rest of that Texans wide receiver core. That's pretty impressive. So
I'm deep in the draft sticks.
Yeah, in round 54 of the draft. Right, let's get Brevin Jordan locked up in round number 15 again. A guy looking for a big year this year, and we know got some people like Jarvis Landry coming off the board. I think Jarvis Landry's pretty good value in round 15 there as well.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Then we got a big running back run here with people like Williams, Strong, McKissick, and Sermon, Pacheco all coming off the board. Tyler Badie coming off the board as well. What do you think about Tyler Badie? A lot of hype going on about him, right? But
yeah, there was plenty of good talk coming out of Ravens OTAs about him. He looked impressive catching the ball out of the backfield, as well as, you know, the running at OTAs isn't really something that you can grade an awful lot on. It's like really when you get to training camp, that's when the tackles start flying in and all the pads are on. That's when you can start getting excited when you hear about training camp reports. But
yeah,
by all accounts, he held his own, and I'm not too worried about him. I think he's going to develop into a good role player. But at the same time, the Ravens don't always throw rookies in early doors. I mean, look at J.K. Dobbins. He had something like 25 rushing attempts before the Week 8 bye in his rookie year. And I just find it hard to believe that they'd throw him in when we saw Tyson Williams last year for the Ravens. He was missing protection assignments. He left yards on the field, and they completely moved him out of the game in favor of dusty old running backs. So whilst I think if you're in deep dynasty leagues, like a lot of the leagues we're in are quite big leagues, and, you know, you start in maybe 10, 11 guys, he's an absolutely great guy to have on your bench. If you could sell him high based on how cheap you got him in fantasy drafts a couple of months ago, I'd be completely open to that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to get you to say it. I took him in the Scott Fish Bowl, so I'm trying to keep as many nice things. The news came up about like Dobbins. I did exactly what I said not to do. I was like, oh no, Dobbins is on that list, and I was like, oh, Tyler Badie's still there. I'll take him in. I think it was round 20, so not too
perfect value.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So here we are in round number 16, the back end of it, 16, pick number 8. Let's flick on to all. Right. Again, this is the sleeper glitch. I imagine these quarterbacks, most of them will be gone. They are all going to go here in round 17. So it's take a quarterback now or forever hold your peace because they're all going to go.
I'm going to take Daniel Jones. I think Daniel
Nice.
Jones is one of those, there's Jared Goff still on the board, Carson Wentz, and you can make arguments in favor of those being more reliable, possibly in certain situations. But Daniel Jones, now with Brian Daboll in New York, there's a real chance that he's got the best scenario he's ever had. Saquon Barkley's healthy for the first time in a couple of years. The pass catchers seem to be in an okay sort of level. It'd be nice to see good reports coming out about Kenny Golladay early on into camp, but we'll have to wait and see. But if Daniel Jones can even be sort of play up to half of his potential with this coaching system and they've made improvements on the O-line, then he could be somebody whose value could be much higher by this time next year.
Yeah, exactly. Two-sport athlete, Daniel Jones, as well. Do you see that? He's like
No?
part of the American Cornhole League now. You know that
Oh, really?
cornhole?
Okay.
Like throwing the beanbag into a hole? Yeah, he's like in the
Elite.
major tour for that. Yeah, so yeah, elite athlete Daniel Jones. So let's get him locked up. And yeah, like I said, the sleeper glitch happens. All these quarterbacks now are just going to disappear in round 17. Watch this. Look at this. So
Right.
we're back on the board again, and then the rest of these guys will go. So I'll show you the flex positions here with Tyquan Thornton up at the top, Laviska Shenault, Odell, lots of wide receivers sitting up at the top. Odell Beckham Jr. We don't know where he's going to end up. Obviously, Julio Jones is signed today, but I imagine people will wait a bit longer before signing Odell Beckham because of the injury.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any reason for him to rush either. He might as well sit. He's not going to be training, so why rush the same train to be in there for training camp?
Yeah.
It still makes so much sense for him to go back to the Rams if the Rams are willing to pay the kind of money that he probably deserves, given what we saw at the back end of last year. But yeah, Beckham for me in seasonal fantasy stuff, I'm not really too interested because I feel like it could easily be around week 14, week 15 by the time he signs.
Yeah.
And perhaps he's an easy buy low who you could move on to a contender near the time. But if you're a contender who needed wide receiver help, how much are you realistically even going to pay for Odell Beckham at that point? Like a late second, maybe? I don't know. Yeah. So what have we got running back here?
Let's have a look. Running backs, we got Snoop Connor, who's been creeping up this chart ever so slowly. Every episode I've done, he's crept up a little bit more, and he's there. Dearness Johnson, incredibly talented running back, just happens to have two incredibly talented running backs ahead of him. Chris Carson obviously just retired. I don't think I've ever been more happy to see a player retire than I have to see Chris Carson. That is such good news for his long-term health.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was one of those. It was sad to see, but it kind of felt inevitable that it was going that way.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
the player who's catching my eye is Chris Evans.
Yes.
Joe Mixon. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, so talk to me about Chris Evans, right? Because this hype is kind of the last couple of months is really, really coming on, right? So what is it you like in particular about Chris Evans?
So Chris Evans, for me, he seems explosive when he has flashed at times, but also it's the stuff coming out of the Bengals. They don't seem to want to prioritize Mixon as a 3-down back, despite reports that he did last year. They, during the Super Bowl, they had him off the field for Smadgy P. Ryan on key plays, and it feels like Chris Evans could be that kind of explosive player that the Bengals would love in a side that really values and prioritizes explosive plays in the style of play. All the word seems to be kind of filtering out from there. And like I mentioned in my tips, learning who to listen to is something big for me. And somebody who I always pay a lot of attention to is Josh Norris over at Underdog. He's convinced that Chris Evans is going to have a big year, and he's done some great videos on it. And for me, Josh Norris has led me in the right direction on several players in the past, so I'm quite happy to trust in his opinion and get on board with this one here as well.
Nice. I like this. Let's get let's get Chris Evans locked up. Chris Evans as well. For people watching, there's a chance Chris Evans is on your waiver wire actually, because last year not a lot of people picked him up, and there's a small chance that he is available right now for free. So go out and have a check and see if Chris Evans is sitting about on your waiver wire. And we're on the board for the last time in our mock draft here on the hot seat. And I'll just flick on and show you all positions here as Laviska Shenault, Nico Collins, one of my favorite guys as well, up there with Romeo Dubs, one of the two.
Yeah.
Romeo is sitting up there with Sam Howell, Justin Ross, who's injured again, the same foot again, and some other guys as well. Curtis Samuel, he's probably going to be injured again, but if he's fit, he could be very good. Is anyone standing out for you, or is there someone you have in mind that you want to take a flyer on who might be way further down the list?
I'm definitely intrigued by Laviska Shenault this year, but I'm not intrigued enough in this build. I feel like my wide receivers are really a position of strength that I wanted them to be. If I'm relying on Laviska Shenault to come in and make good fantasy points for me week to week, then something's dramatically gone wrong with the rest of my team, and I probably wouldn't be caring about how many points he got anyway.
Yeah.
Gerald Everett is somebody who I think people abandoned a little quickly after last year because he had probably one of the worst games ever, where he had like 2 goal line fumbles and gave an interception to another team. But he actually had really promising stats last year, and now you look at the situation that he's in the Chargers. We want pieces of that offense. Jared Cook's left. Donald Parham has never been anything but an occasional red zone target. And Gerald Everett could really have a very valuable role with the Chargers, and he might just carry me a bit at the times where Trey McBride or Brevin Jordan aren't able to put up the numbers that I need this year.
So you're locking in Gerald Everett then as your final choice. Let's get him locked up as well. And so Gerald Everett rounds out our team with Romeo Dubs/Dubs coming up there at the end with Laviska Shenault, Justin Ross as well, and Corey Davis. Wow, at the back end of the 18th. Who'd have thought he'd be going there this stage last year, right? That's crazy. So let's have a look at our team then, Tom. We've gone young, so let's see how well we've done. We got your boy Lamar Jackson, quarterback. Perfect start for you there. We got Breece Hall and Rachaad White in at running back. And then the very impressive wide receiver run, which we'll get to more in our bench spots. You got Jalen Waddle, Deontay Johnson, and Devonta Smith in those roles at the minute. You got Cole Kmet. You got Rashad Bateman and Trey McBride in those flex spots with Justin Fields, the super flex. Kenny Pickett can come in and out as well. Some running backs back up. You got Ronald Jones and Zamir White there. And then more wide receiver work with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You got Brevin Jordan. You got Daniel Jones. You got Chris Evans and Gerald Everett. How are you feeling about that team, Tom?
I feel good about it. I think, there could be some disappointing weeks early on in the season where perhaps Rachaad White, Breece Hall, they don't get workhorse usage. And, tight end, it might be a little tricky deciding who to play each week. But on the whole, I think there's so much to love with this squad that even if I needed to move a few pieces to acquire different types of players, I've got so much upside and so much youth that it wouldn't be tricky to do. And I've got a lot of players who are likable players.
Yeah, that's such a big thing as well, right? Like so many times, like a lot of people be like, oh, well, like, why do you like, for example, like Irv Smith Jr., right? I really like Irv Smith Jr. And a lot of time people are like, oh, why do you like Irv Smith Jr.? I was like, I just kind of like him, right? I don't really have that many stats to back it up. I just, I kind of like the guy. I think he'll do well. Like, it's kind of a gut thing more than anything else, right?
Yeah. No, I think, and at the end of the day, you've always got to have that kind of balance. Like for me, I don't care what round Sean Watson falls to. I'm not drafting him. I don't care. Year after year, there'll be players who I just don't want to look at my roster and be rooting for them to do well. Like, it's fantasy's a game, and if that means that I miss out on certain things and certain people do better because they do snap at that value, fine. That's kind of I want to root for people who I like. And in my home league a few years back, one of the teams that made the fantasy championship picked up Tim Tebow just to put him on the bench so that he'd be part of a winning roster. And we have to remember how much of a game it is. And, these things are supposed to be fun, and you've got to enjoy your Sundays when you're screaming at the TV.
Yeah, exactly. And you got a lot of likable guys in that team. And, I just really like the potential upside there. Like, you got your quarterback locked in, right? You don't have to worry about your wide receivers for, what, 8 years. You don't have to worry about your wide receivers there, right? Tight end, super solid, locked in, right? Those Justin Fields
Definitely.
as well. Yeah, like the only thing you need to do now is whenever you decide it's time to win, then you can stock up and get more running backs if those guys don't work out. And that's my favorite way to build a team as well. So I think you've done an amazing job there, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Nice. And just before we end the show, I just wanted to say, Tom, just thank you so much again for coming on, and for everyone watching, everyone listening as well. We got the Hall of Flame here, which is it's stayed the same for so long now as well. We got Murph sitting up at the top. He's been the king for ages up there. We got Jay Stein sitting here as well at number 2, and we got Kev, the Dynasty GOAT, sitting at number 3. So we're going to see if we can get Tom T. Strack onto this board. And the only way to do it is you got to go over to the YouTube channel. You got to give this a thumbs up. The more thumbs up it gets, the higher up the rankings that Tom's going to get. So let's see if we can get him into that top 3, which he thoroughly deserves, I think. And Tom, just before we go, do you want to remind everybody where they can find you again online?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at NFLTstrack, which is TSTRACK. You find a lot of my best ball and even redraft content over at Fantasy Pros up until the season starts. And then I'll be firing up my regular DFS columns. I'm not quite sure where they're going to be yet. They might be on my site, nflbestball.co.uk, but I'll definitely be tweeting about them as we get close to the season.
Perfect. And thanks again, everybody, for listening. And Tom, thank you once again for coming on. An absolute pleasure to have you on the show and listen to all your hints and tips and see that awesome team you drafted. And everyone listening, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And just remind everyone, even though we're cooling down the hot seat, just keep yourself lit. Until next time, see you later. Bye.